He gave blood to save wounded alien child. Now her mother demands he breed with her. The temporary medical bay on the asteroid outpost throbbed with chaos. The overhead alarms pulsed in time with the collective urgency. Human and Zalari physicians moved side by side, sweat-slicked and silver-skinned, their hands bloody and trembling as they raced to keep their charges alive. The smell of antiseptics struggled to mask the metallic tang of Zalari blood. Michael Santos, late 30s, face etched by hardship and heart, crouched beside a wounded Zalari girl. Lyra lay on the cot, her metallic skin dulled to pewter, a jagged gash splitting her side. Silvery blood welled between his fingers as he pressed a pad of gauze against the wound, but already the cloth was sodden, streaking his hands with gleaming silver. The girl's breathing was shallow, her wide, reflective eyes fixed on him in panic and pain. Dr. Nguyen, sleeves rolled and eyes wild behind her goggles, called out from across the table, "Her cell counts are plummeting. We don't have cross-species transfusion data." Michael glanced from the monitor, flickering an angry red, to Lyra's face. He tried to steady his voice, switching to the rough Zalari he'd learned over the years. "Hold on," he said, gentle, his words deliberate. Lyra's hand, cool and stiff, latched onto his. Her grip was desperate, metallic fingers digging into his palm as if she could anchor herself to life. Her chest hitched, a last stutter of breath. The monitor blared flat. The room seemed to freeze, the chaos beyond the curtain fading to a distant hum. Acting before fear could paralyze him, Michael barked, "Nguyen, set up a direct transfusion." Dr. Nguyen's hands hesitated over the supply cart, voice tight with fear. "That's untested. My blood's O negative. If it helps, we try." Michael's tone brooked no argument. He shoved up his sleeve, revealing old burn scars that snaked across tanned skin. "Now!" Nguyen's hands moved quickly, prepping the lines. Michael barely felt the prick of the needle as she inserted the catheter, his gaze fixed on Lyra's ashen face. Human blood, his blood, began to flow, a crimson line threading through clear tubing, merging with the alien silver in Lyra's veins. Seconds crawled. Then, miraculously, Lyra's skin shimmered, color returning like liquid chrome beneath the lights. The wound puckered and sealed, leaving only a thin, shining scar. The monitor's shrill alarm softened to a steady pulse. Lyra's eyelids fluttered. She inhaled, the breath clear and strong, her eyes snapping open, brighter than before. She blinked at Michael, voice a clear chime. "Thank you." He opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the privacy curtain was swept aside with a hiss. In strode Sarah, tall and statuesque, her metallic skin flawless, every movement poised and commanding. Her features were sharp, lips pressed in a line of controlled worry, eyes like polished mercury. She drew the gaze of every doctor in the bay. "Lyra!" Sarah's voice, resonant and melodic, broke with relief. She knelt in a smooth motion, her embrace enveloping her daughter with a gentleness that belied her formidable presence. Lyra, still clutching Michael's hand, looked up. "Mother, the human saved me. His blood healed me." Sarah's eyes fixed on Michael. In them, he saw calculation, hope, suspicion, all swirling beneath the polished surface. She rose slowly, studying him, letting the silence stretch until Michael's heart beat against his ribs. "You gave your blood for my child," she said, her tone even, but edged with something dangerous. "She was dying," Michael replied, voice low but unwavering. "I had to try." Sarah considered him for a long, breathless moment. Then she straightened, her presence filling the cramped space, her silver gaze unblinking. "You did," she said, voice softer, measured. "And now, human, there are consequences to discuss." She motioned for him to follow. The doctors in the bay exchanged glances as Michael peeled off his gloves and stepped away from Lyra, feeling the weight of Sarah's words settle over him. They walked briskly through the sterile corridors of the outpost, passing Zalari and humans alike, some pausing in their tracks, others casting wary glances. The pulse of alarms faded as they moved deeper into the heart of the station, every footstep echoing on metal decking. Sarah led him to a secure chamber, palm pressed to the access plate. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Once they were inside, she sealed it behind them. "Sit," Sarah ordered, her tone brooking no defiance. Michael stayed on his feet, wariness plain in his stance. "I'll stand." A flicker of a smile ghosted across her lips, but she merely circled him, steps slow and deliberate, like a predator assessing its prey. "You may have just changed the fate of my people," she began, voice steady, every syllable measured. She explained that the Zalari were suffering from genetic decline, an ancient malaise that had robbed them of resilience and hope. Lyra's recovery, she told him, was not just a miracle. It was unprecedented. His blood had not only healed, but had enhanced, catalyzed a spark the Zalari thought long extinguished. "Our traditions are ancient," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "When a bloodline is preserved in this way, the savior is bound to it." Michael's brow furrowed, unease plain. "You mean a genetic pact?" Sarah nodded once, slow and solemn. "Correct. You must contribute your DNA, through close union, until conception is achieved." He took an involuntary step back, the air suddenly thin. Sarah moved with him, her presence magnetic, hand hovering just shy of his chest, not quite touching but commanding his attention. "It is necessity," she said quietly, "and law." Michael looked away, jaw clenched against a dozen conflicting emotions. "And if I say no?" "Then my people's future ends here," Sarah replied, voice unyielding, but in her eyes, just for an instant, there was fear. He closed his eyes, every muscle tense with the burden she had thrust upon him. The impossible choice pressed down, his autonomy against the fate of an entire people. "I need to think," he said, words barely more than a whisper. Sarah watched him, her posture regal, eyes searching his face for something she could not demand. "You have until sunrise." She turned and slipped through the door, leaving Michael alone in the sterile chamber, his hands stained with silver and red, the fate of two species suddenly tangled within his veins. Sarah's private suite glowed in the hush of night, the walls alive with shifting blue and silver light. The ceiling arched overhead in seamless curves of pale alloy, refracting the soft luminance like the inside of a living gemstone. Michael paused in the threshold, uninvited but expected, drawn by the soundless gravity of what was to come. Sarah stood near the far wall, gazing at a holographic projection of her crystalline homeworld. The image shimmered, turquoise ice fields, arching silver spires, alien clouds trailing above a luminous horizon. She wore formal Zalari attire, sleek and geometric, the fabric like liquid metal molded to the lines of her body. Her hair was coiled in intricate braids, reflecting indigo light, and her bearing was regal, a silhouette both sharp and impossibly graceful. Michael's resolve flickered. He'd meant to keep this all clinical, procedural, but now, watching her, alien, beautiful, utterly alone, he couldn't deny the fascination tugging at him. He cleared his throat, searching for the words to anchor himself. "I want to know all the terms," he said, voice steady but edged with something raw. "Every one." Sarah turned from the projection, eyes catching his. Liquid chrome met earthy brown, and for a moment, time slowed. She nodded, her approval soft but unmistakable. "The pact is not only physical, it requires emotional and mental connection, partners, in every sense." The air between them vibrated with the weight of unspoken things. Michael crossed his arms, trying to keep his distance, but the tension between them was magnetic. His gaze drifted to the elegant geometry of her collarbone, the flicker of vulnerability behind her composure. He swallowed. "For how long?" Until conception and the child's safe arrival, Sarah replied, her tone gentle but unwavering. 6 to 8 months. Afterward, you may return to your life. But the child stays with me. Michael's jaw tightened as her meaning settled over him. He caught the faint glint of a data pad on her desk, assignment orders already displayed in bold script. You were sure I'd accept, he said, annoyance sharpening his words. Sarah's eyes softened. She approached, steps slow, deliberate. I hoped you'd understand. Something shifted in her voice, an echo of hope or maybe fear. Michael studied her, seeing past the flawless metal of her skin to the weariness in her shoulders, the ache of centuries carried alone. Beneath her beauty and strength was a loneliness that resonated with his own. Why me? He asked, voice quiet now. Sarah let her arms fall to her sides, the formal mask slipping, just a little. Your blood is rare, but also your compassion, your bravery. My people have grown cold. You reminded us of warmth. Michael looked away, uncertain how to accept such praise. Silence stretched, charged and trembling. Sarah drew a slow breath, as if gathering herself. Perhaps, she said, softer still, I wish to learn to choose, not just to endure. He met her gaze, searching for subterfuge, finding only honesty and longing. If I agree, he said, mutual respect, honesty, no secrets. Sarah inclined her head, the faintest smile gracing her lips. Agreed. She extended her hand. Michael hesitated only a moment before taking it. Her palm was cool, but he felt a faint tremor, a vulnerability she let no one else see. Then it is decided, Sarah whispered, voice almost lost beneath the hum of the suite. Their hands lingered together, an unspoken promise sealed between their intertwined fingers. The days that followed unfolded in a series of moments, each more intimate than the last. The outpost's routines faded into the background as Michael and Sarah began the slow, necessary dance of strangers becoming partners. They shared meals in her suite, the table arrayed with both human rations and Zalari delicacies, strange, crystalline fruit that snapped when bitten, aromatic stews with colors that shimmered in the light. Michael taught her the names of Earth's simplest flavors, and she laughed when he struggled to pronounce Zalari words, her silver eyes bright with mischief. He watched her with Lyra, tenderness in Sarah's every gesture. The fierce matriarch transformed in her daughter's presence, her voice soft, her touch gentle. Michael caught himself smiling as Lyra recounted her recovery, mimicking his accent and laughing at his awkward attempts to braid his hair in the Zalari fashion. In quiet hours, Sarah asked about Earth, his childhood beneath rust-red canyons, the wild salt wind on his face, the taste of rain after a long drought. Michael found himself telling stories he had not spoken aloud in years, his words weaving memories between them. Their touches grew more frequent, a brush of fingers as they passed in the corridor, a lingering hand on his shoulder as she guided him through Zalari customs. Their glances held, stretching just beyond comfort, then softening into something mutual, something hungry and unsure. On the fifth night, Michael found himself pacing outside her chambers, heart thundering in his chest. He hesitated at the door, remembering Sarah's words, not only physical, but partners in every sense. He entered to find her standing before the window, lights painting her in shifting hues of blue and silver. She wore a simple gown, geometric lines accentuating the subtle strength of her body. The air trembled with anticipation. Sarah turned, the slightest tremor in her fingers betraying nerves. "You're anxious," she said, a smile touching her lips. Michael tried to laugh, but it came out thin, breathless. "Wouldn't you be?" She moved closer, her presence a force field that drew him in. Her fingers, cool and precise, traced the line of his jaw. A jolt shot through him, awakening something primal and unfamiliar. "Anxiety sharpens the senses," Sarah murmured, voice rich and low. They stood close, the space between them electric. Michael lifted his hand, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. His touch lingered, hesitant, reverent. She leaned in, and for a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. They undressed each other slowly, as if mapping new terrain. The fabric of her gown slipped over her shoulders, pooling at her feet like spilled mercury. Michael shrugged out of his uniform, his hands trembling as Sarah traced the scars on his arms, the faded burns from battles long past. Their first kiss was uncertain, a question more than an answer. But as their lips met, the hesitation melted. The kiss deepened, hungry and searching. Sarah's hands tangled in his hair. Michael's arms encircled her waist, the heat of their bodies bridging the gap between human and alien. They tumbled together onto the bed, the sheets whispering beneath them. Their movements were slow at first, learning each other's contours, each gasp and sigh. Michael marveled at the cool smoothness of her skin, the way her metallic body responded to his every touch. Sarah's eyes locked with his, luminous and wide, her breath shuddering as he pressed kisses along her collarbone. Their bodies moved in concert, the rhythm building, a song of need and trust. As they reached the edge together, something shifted, a psychic link sparking into existence. Michael felt Sarah's memories crash into his, the glacial vistas of her world, her first flight beneath twin moons, the centuries of solitude cloaked in duty. In return, he offered her his own, a tumble-down, dusty hills, the thrill of first love, the grief of loss. Emotions surged, fear, hope, longing, wonder, melding, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The connection was electric, every nerve ablaze. Sarah gasped, her body arching, her mind thrown wide open. Michael clung to her, anchoring them both as the flood of memories and feelings rushed between them. In that moment, something awakened in Sarah. Dormant abilities, new pathways sparking to life. Michael felt her essence wrap around his, both of them changed, remade by the joining. When the wave passed, they lay together, breathless, stunned by the depth of what they had shared. The silence was not empty but alive with understanding. Sarah curled into his side, her hand finding his, fingers twining. They stared at the shifting lights overhead, the boundaries between them irrevocably altered. The sterile light of the medical suite sharpened every surface, casting Sarah's metallic skin in icy gleam and deepening the lines of fatigue on Michael's face. They sat side by side on the examination table, Sarah's hand resting atop Michael's, fingers interlaced in silent reassurance. Monitors hummed, reflecting cryptic patterns in the glassy walls. Dr. Tavin, the Zalari physician, moved around them with practiced precision. His face, older and more weathered than most, betrayed fascination beneath a veneer of professionalism. He reviewed the neural scans, his eyes flickering as the data scrolled across his visor. "Her neural activity is off the charts," Dr. Tavin said, voice laced with awe. "She's processing information at impossible rates, whole sequences of logic, memory, sensation, all at once." Michael swallowed, watching Sarah's unreadable expression. "And me?" he asked, tension knotting his shoulders. Dr. Tavin adjusted his visor, eyes narrowing as he examined the second display. "Your brain chemistry is shifting, new synapses forming, entire neural networks reconfiguring. You're changing, Michael. Both of you are." Sarah and Michael exchanged a glance, part fear, part exhilaration. The world felt different now, as if each moment shimmered on the edge of revelation. Later, in the privacy of Sarah's suite, they sat close together, experimenting with the psychic link that had blossomed between them. They reached for each other not only with hands, but with thought. Michael tried to picture a memory, childhood laughter echoing in a canyon, and felt Sarah's answering warmth ripple through him, wordless and vivid. their connection amplified with touch. Sarah's palm traced Michael's cheek, and he gasped as her emotions flooded him: awe, curiosity, a fierce yearning. His own thoughts tangled with hers, flashes of pain and hope, the certainty of belonging. Others are changing too, Sarah whispered, voice trembling with awe. Hidden genes awakening, abilities once lost. The old stories said this was possible, but we never believed. Michael's breath caught. You can sense them? She nodded, eyes shining. They're afraid. Some are excited. The whole station is alive, in ways we've never felt before. Drawn by the need for air and space, they slipped onto the observation deck. The wide glass wall looked out on a sea of stars, nebulae swirling in blue and violet. Michael let himself relax into the view. Sarah's fingers threaded through his. He watched the cosmos, mind buzzing with possibility. You're triggering evolution, he said quietly. Yes, Sarah replied, but not all accept it. Michael frowned. Why wouldn't they want this? Sarah's lips pressed together. The council fears what they cannot control. If every Zalari awakens, our society could fracture. There are those who wish to stop the changes, to keep our people as they were. Even among your own, there is unrest. Michael turned, searching her face. Among the humans? Your Commander Price, Ambassador Lin, they're wary. They see the danger as well as the hope. He thought of Price's stern warnings, Lin's tight-lipped concern. Michael felt Sarah's uncertainty echo through the bond, but also her defiance, her conviction. He drew her close, their connection a shield against the unknown. So what do we do? Sarah's voice was a thread of steel. We continue. Show them that change can be hope, not fear. Their lips met, fierce and promising. In that kiss was everything: courage, defiance, the seed of something new. Dawn arrived with a crimson flare through the viewport, but peace was shattered by the sudden wail of alarms. Michael and Sarah jolted awake, their senses instantly aligning. The psychic link sharpened everything. Danger thrummed through the air, carried on currents of fear and aggression. They sprang from bed, moving in perfect synchrony. Michael grabbed his medkit and a service pistol. Sarah snatched her ceremonial staff, the crystalline weapon glinting in her grip. The corridor outside boiled with chaos. Armed humans and Zalari, faces twisted with fanatic resolve, stormed the medical bay. They moved as a single ragged force, weapons raised, voices howling demands. Their motives were clear: stop the changes, eliminate the source. Michael and Sarah pressed forward, anticipation guiding their every move. With their link, they moved as one, Sarah's speed and precision blending with Michael's tactical instincts. He called out warnings as she ducked incoming fire, his hands steady as he administered a sedative to a panicked patient. Sarah's staff swept in graceful arcs, disarming attackers, disabling without killing. A Zalari radical lunged at Michael. Before he could strike, Sarah had already sensed the danger, her body interposing, staff catching the blow. Michael rolled aside, drawing the attacker off balance, then subdued him with a precise jab of the hypo. Left, Sarah warned, and Michael spun, firing a stun round that dropped a human assailant before he could reach Lyra's bed. They moved through the chaos, every action in perfect concert. Their psychic bond let them feel each other's intent. No hesitation, no misstep. Michael protected Lyra, shielding her with his body, while Sarah faced the onslaught, her form a blur of motion and resolve. The sounds of violence faded, replaced by groans and the hiss of medical equipment. The last of the radicals were subdued, their weapons scattered on the floor. Michael knelt beside Lyra, checking her pulse, while Sarah moved among the wounded, her presence calming, authoritative. The doors hissed open once more, and Elder Voss entered. He was ancient even by Zalari standards, his presence immense, tall and broad, metallic skin dulled with age, eyes sharp as diamond. He surveyed the aftermath, his gaze lingering on the tangled bodies of attackers and the pale faces of the saved. "The attackers are contained," Elder Voss intoned, his voice carrying the gravity of centuries. "The council will convene at once to address these events." Sarah rose to meet his eyes, spine straight, dignity undimmed by the ordeal. Michael moved to her side, fingers entwining with hers, their unity plain for all to see. Elder Voss regarded them both, eyes lingering on their clasped hands, the connection that had become the axis of this new world. There was no judgment, only acknowledgement of a force too powerful to deny. As the medics tended to the wounded and the alarms faded, Sarah and Michael stood together amid the chaos. The world around them was uncertain, broken and remade in equal measure, but in that moment, their bond was unbreakable. Fingers entwined, they faced the dawn, love blossoming in the aftermath of violence, hope kindling in the eyes of all who watched. The conference chamber was cold and white, all sharp lines and glass, flooded with daylight from the asteroid's artificial sun. Michael stood alone at one end of the long table, shoulders squared, eyes steady. At the opposite end, Commander Price's uniform was immaculate, his jaw set like stone. Beside him, Ambassador Lin regarded Michael with a skeptical calm, fingers folded on a data slate. Price spoke first, voice clipped and ringing with authority. "You're being recalled. This psychic link with the Zalari, dangerous, unpredictable. We can't risk contamination of the crew or the wider alliance." Michael didn't flinch. He'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in his mind. "It's not contamination, it's evolution," he said, his tone even. "It connects us. It's what we're meant for, what we could become." Ambassador Lin's eyes narrowed. Her words were precise, each one chosen to wound or persuade. "And in pursuit of this connection, you'd turn your back on your own kind? Your planet? Your people?" A flicker of frustration passed through Michael, but he held her gaze. "I'm not turning my back on anyone. I'm talking about becoming more, together, not apart. Humans, Zalari. We have a chance to build something new." As he spoke, a sudden surge of emotion crashed through his mind. The bond. Sarah. Though she was far away, he felt her anxiety, her resistance as the Zalari Council pressed her to end the pact. Ancient voices, stern and fearful, surrounded her. The psychic link vibrated with her determination. Back in the chamber, Price's patience snapped. "You're making a mistake, Santos. I'm giving you a direct order. Return to the Sol fleet. Now!" Michael straightened, letting the bond with Sarah flood him with certainty. "No," he said, voice resolute. "I'm staying." Price slammed a fist on the table, the sound echoing in the silent chamber. "That's an order." Michael met his eyes, unyielding. "Then court-martial me." In that instant, through the bond, he felt Sarah standing in her own circle of opposition, the council's ancient faces demanding surrender. She stood her ground, her decision reverberating through Michael's mind. They were making the same choice, apart, yet together. Michael didn't wait for permission. He turned and walked from the conference chamber, leaving Price and Lin frozen in disbelief. Night settled over the outpost, the viewports gleaming with 1,000 distant stars. In Sarah's suite, the atmosphere pulsed with quiet gravity. Ancient artifacts, crystalline vials, folded cloths, a pair of intertwined rings, were arranged on a low table. The room was lit by a gentle blue glow, shadows dancing in the corners. Michael stood beside Sarah, nerves and anticipation warring within him. Lyra, small and solemn, watched from a seat near the window, her silver eyes wide with wonder. Dr. Tavin stood by the threshold, hands clasped in ceremonial posture, his presence both witness and guardian. Sarah wore robes of midnight and pearl, the fabric catching the light in shifting patterns. She looked at Michael, her eyes deep as the void, then began the ritual in Zalari, her voice a quiet resonance that seemed to vibrate in the very air. I offer my strength to your weakness, my wisdom to your questions, my heart to your loneliness. Michael listened, heart pounding, then replied in English, his words simple but powerful. I offer my protection to your vulnerability, my healing to your pain, my soul to your journey. The words hung between them, threads in a tapestry centuries old. As the vows wove together, the psychic link between them brightened, an energy humming beneath their skin, in their breath, in the silent places where their minds touched. Sarah lifted one of the crystalline rings. She pressed it gently to Michael's chest, just over his heart. The crystal flared with pale light, then dimmed, leaving a faint, pulsing warmth. She handed him the second ring. Michael pressed it to the hollow of her throat, and the light bathed her skin in iridescent color. A final blessing from Dr. Tavin in the old tongue, then a soft touch to their foreheads. Lyra stepped forward, her small hand joining theirs for a heartbeat, a silent, perfect witness. Afterward, Dr. Tavin led Lyra from the room, leaving Michael and Sarah alone in the shimmering quiet. They stood facing each other, the ritual complete, the energy of their bond pulsing between them, brighter, deeper, more intricate than ever before. Sarah lifted a trembling hand to Michael's cheek. He caught it, pressing his lips to her palm. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Are you ready? Michael's answer was a smile, soft and sure. With you, always. They came together, mouths meeting with a hunger born of relief, of promise, of finally belonging. Their hands roamed, tracing the lines of muscle and scar, the cool smoothness of Sarah's skin, the warmth of Michael's. Garments slipped away, falling in silence to the floor. The bed was cool, sheets gleaming in the blue glow. They lay together, bodies pressed close, the psychic link a living thread weaving through every nerve. Each caress sent waves of sensation, pleasure, joy, awe, rushing through both of them. Sarah's hair fanned around them like a halo of liquid silver. Michael's hands trembled as he touched her, every motion echoed by a surge of feeling from her mind to his. With every movement, every whispered word, the bond deepened. Their thoughts tangled, their memories collided. Sarah's childhood beneath crystalline skies, Michael's laughter on red earth, moments of pain and triumph, love and loneliness. As their passion crested, the air around them began to shimmer. Light flickered at the edges of vision, gold, silver, colors unnameable. Power flowed between them, an electric current that seemed to alter the very fabric of their being. They were no longer separate, no longer even two. They were one mind, one heartbeat, one new and ancient song. Their bodies arched together, the link flaring bright. For a moment they floated, suspended in light, DNA unspooling and reweaving, spirit and flesh remade. When the wave of power finally receded, they collapsed into each other's arms, breathless, their skins still tingling with aftershocks. The room was quiet, but for their mingled heartbeats, the light outside the window soft and endless. Michael brushed a strand of hair from Sarah's face, and she smiled, radiant, changed, his as he was hers. They lay together, forever altered, knowing the future was uncertain, but theirs to claim. 6 months later, morning light streamed through crystalline windows, painting prismatic patterns across the walls of the new healing center. The air was fragrant with unfamiliar blossoms, the distant hum of alien songbirds drifting in from the open terraces. Sarah rested against snowy pillows, her form visibly changed, her metallic sheen now softened with a subtle warmth, her features glowing with new life and purpose. In her arms, Michael cradled their newborn daughter, Naya. The infant's skin shimmered in the gentle light, a seamless blend of bronze and silver, her tiny fists curling and uncurling as she gazed up at him. Her eyes shifted with every blink, copper flecks dissolving into liquid chrome, as if she were still deciding who and what she would become. Michael's breath caught in his chest. He pressed a gentle kiss to Naya's forehead, feeling the faintest spark of energy pass between them. A connection beyond words, one that hummed through his blood and wrapped around his heart. He smiled, his voice a tender hush. "She's perfect." Sarah watched them, her smile radiant and tired. She reached out, brushing her fingers over Naya's delicate hand. "Naya," she said softly. "It means harmony, in both our languages. She is our bridge." For a moment, the three of them lingered in silence, their bond tangible in the golden morning light. Beyond the window, the world had transformed. The cities that once soared in crystalline isolation now twisted skyward in bold new forms, familiar domes and elegant Zalari arches interwoven with human steel and glass. Streets bustled with beings of both species, their differences now points of beauty, not division. The soft chime of the door interrupted the peace. Elder Voss entered, his age-worn frame draped in ceremonial robes. His eyes, sharp and ancient, softened at the sight of the child. He approached the bed with the measured steps of one who had witnessed centuries of change. "The awakening will continue," Voss intoned, his voice heavy with the weight of history. "Too many have changed to reverse it. The tide cannot be pushed back." Michael nodded, feeling the truth of it in his bones. He shifted Naya in his arms, her tiny fingers gripping his thumb with astonishing strength. Sarah offered a grateful smile to Voss, her gaze bright with hope. Through the wide window, the skyline shimmered. Construction drones danced around towers, laying down iridescent panels that caught the sun and reflected it in rainbow arcs. At street level, families, human, Zalari, and those newly blended, walked together. The world outside was a tapestry of possibility, the old boundaries dissolving before their eyes. The door opened again, and Commander Price stepped in, his presence both unexpected and familiar. His uniform was less rigid than before, and there was a new openness in his expression. Price stopped at the foot of the bed, clearing his throat. "Your court-martial's been dropped, Michael." He allowed himself the faintest of smiles. "The council decided that progress outweighs protocol." Surprise and relief rippled through Michael. He looked at Sarah, then back at Price, laughter bubbling up unbidden. "That's a first," he said, shaking his head. "Thank you." Price shrugged, the hard lines of his face softening as he looked at Naya. "You gave us something we never expected. She's remarkable." At that moment, Dr. Tavin entered, his arms full of data slates and monitors. He smiled as he set his instruments aside, then leaned over to examine Naya with professional curiosity. The baby fixed him with her shimmering eyes, unblinking. "She senses the field already," Dr. Tavin murmured in wonder. "Her abilities will surpass yours and Sarah's combined. She is the next step." Naya gurgled and reached for him, her tiny hand brushing Michael's finger. The contact set off a gentle pulse, a soft golden glow that radiated from the trio, lingering in the space between them. Michael gasped as a rush of sensation filled him. Love, comfort, and 1,000 flickering thoughts not his own. Through Naya's touch, he sensed the psychic network spreading outward. Other human Zalari pairs awakening, their newborns carrying the same promise, the same fire. Each connection was a spark in the darkness, a thread in a growing web that would soon span the galaxy. He looked down at his daughter, awed by her strength and the legacy she represented. "What now?" he whispered, not only to Sarah but to the future. Sarah reached for his hand, her own trembling slightly with emotion. "Now we create the future our daughter deserves," she said, her voice clear and sure. "A universe where love knows no boundaries, where difference is not danger, but hope." Elder Voss watched them, solemn and approving. "You are the first, But you will not be the last. This is only the beginning. Michael leaned closer to Sarah, Naya nestled between them. Through the window, the twin moons of the Zalari homeworld began their ascent, bathing the city in silvery light. As the sky deepened to indigo and the stars blinked into being, Michael, Sarah, and Naya sat together, their hands intertwined, their hearts and minds united. The psychic bond pulsed strong and steady, echoing outward to the countless others waiting to awaken. Hope shone in their eyes, undimmed. The future, uncertain, beautiful, limitless, was theirs to create. Years unfurled in a blur of color and light, and Naya's presence grew to fill the world around her. Her hair, a river of shifting bronze and silver, bounced as she ran through the city's crystalline corridors. Her eyes, sometimes copper, sometimes chrome, gleamed with a curiosity and kindness that turned heads and softened even the hardest hearts. Naya grew swiftly, her body and mind racing ahead of her peers. By the age of 7, she moved with the composure of someone 3 times her age, yet her laughter rang out pure and unself-conscious, an unbroken melody in the city's heart. She was a living bridge. Where she went, old boundaries faded, replaced by the shimmer of possibility. In the innovation sector, a human technician stood before a workbench scattered with tools. His brow furrowed, but with a flicker of focus, the spanner rose into the air and spun, adjusting a cluster of wires without his hands. He grinned in disbelief, his Zalari colleagues clapping in delight. Naya, watching from the doorway, beamed encouragement, her psychic presence gently nudging the connection, helping him trust the new abilities blossoming within. In a sunlit plaza, a Zalari sculptor stood before a block of living crystal. His hands barely grazed the surface, yet with every shift in his emotions, joy, wonder, awe, the crystal rippled, blooming into forms that sang with color and feeling. Children and elders watched, spellbound. Naya stood among them, her mind open, sharing the sculptor's vision across the psychic network so that even those who could not see could feel the art unfold. The city's parks thrummed with life. Children of every shape and shade tumbled through fields of silver grass, playing games whose rules shifted mid-chase. They spoke in bursts of laughter, then without words, sending images and feelings directly from mind to mind. Sometimes Naya ran with them, sometimes she simply watched, a proud witness to the miracle unfolding. At home, Naya absorbed lessons from both parents. Michael told stories of Earth, tales of sun-baked canyons, rainstorms after drought, the music of birds at dawn. Sarah taught her the deep wisdom of the Zalari, how to listen to the silence between words, how to shape memory and hope into tradition. Naya's mind became a tapestry, weaving Earth's history with Zalari philosophy, each new insight adding another thread to her growing sense of self. Languages flowed through her, old and new. She invented new greetings, blending syllables and gestures from both worlds. Her favorite moments were around the table, sharing meals that fused flavors from both cultures, smoked root vegetables beside crystalline fruit, warm bread beside a spicy Zalari broth. Her laughter, bright and boundless, became a melody the whole household cherished. As she grew, Naya sought to understand her own origin. She watched holo-recordings and read transcripts, the story of a desperate transfusion, a forbidden pact, the first psychic bond that had rippled out to awaken a species. She saw the faces of her parents as they once were, uncertain, afraid, and yet unyielding. She felt the courage it took to break ancient barriers, to trust in love and risk everything for change. By adolescence, Naya's abilities had surpassed even her parents' expectations. She could reach out with her mind, gently nudging others to awaken their own dormant gifts. She became a source of calm in times of fear, a gentle push toward empathy in moments of conflict. She organized gatherings in the council halls and under the twin moons, places where humans and Zalari could speak openly, confessing fears and hopes, misunderstandings, and dreams. She used her psychic gifts to weave connections, sharing memories and sensations across the room. Old arguments faded, new friendships sparked. She listened as much as she spoke, using her presence to guide and heal. She formed the first consciousness network, a living web linking awakened minds across cities, then continents, then worlds. Information and emotion flowed instantly, collective empathy blossoming at the speed of thought. Society changed. Hybrid families became the norm, children born with shifting skin and shining eyes. The old distinctions, human, Zalari, became less important with each passing year. Young people saw themselves not as inheritors of separate worlds, but as the first generation of a new people. Even the oldest counselors found themselves swept along by the tide of unity and change. Naya was called to mediate disputes both large and small. When distant colonies argued over resources, she brought their leaders together, sharing the pain and hope of each side until understanding replaced suspicion. In the Galactic Council, she stood as a symbol, wisdom and empathy incarnate, indispensable to the future of both species. One evening, with the twin moons rising beyond the city's spires, Naya stood on a balcony high above the world. The city sparkled below, a living testament to the union her family had begun. She closed her eyes, letting the night breeze lift her hair, her thoughts drifting outward into the network. A familiar warmth brushed her mind. Her father's presence, gentle and steady as ever. Michael's voice was a thought, a memory, a caress. "You've built something amazing, Naya." She smiled, her heart swelling. "We built it, together." Another pulse, deeper and richer, joined theirs. Sarah, her love flowing through the bond, luminous and unbreakable. Sarah's voice was song and wisdom entwined. It started with two people choosing trust, risk, and love. Naya reached out, expanding her senses across the network. She felt the minds of millions, love blossoming in a garden, gratitude in a classroom, curiosity in a laboratory, unity at a family's dinner table. Each mind shone with its own light, but together they formed a constellation, a new galaxy of connection. Her spirit soared. She opened her eyes to the moons and the world they illuminated, knowing that the harmony she felt was only the beginning. There would be new challenges, new songs to sing, new bridges to build. But the melody of unity would endure, growing richer with every generation. The galaxy, once divided by fear and ignorance, now resonated as one. Naya's laughter joined the chorus, a future born from love, courage, and the will to change, echoing across the stars forever. Our story ends here. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Super Thanks button right under the video to leave a tip. It truly helps our team improve the quality of our work. We're grateful to each and every subscriber for being with us. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.